Welcome back to Objective 7 in Chapter 8 of our 3A2 series. In this objective we'll describe the design and operating principle of synchronous motors. And again, this is another fairly quick objective to get through here, and it's mostly review from 4th class material. So as an interview, let's check out a video then to give us a good overview of a synchronous motor that comes courtesy again of learnengineering.org. So let's check it out.
As the name suggests, synchronous motors are capable of running at constant speed irrespective of the load acting on them. They are machines with high efficiency and are mainly used in high-precision applications. The constant speed characteristic is achieved by interaction between a constant and rotating magnetic field. Rotor of synchronous motor produces constant magnetic field, and stator produces revolving magnetic field. The field coil of stator is excited by a three-phase AC supply. This will produce a revolving magnetic field, which rotates at synchronous speed. Rotor is excited by a DC power supply, so it acts like a permanent magnet. Alternatively, rotor can also be made of permanent magnet. Interaction of rotor and RMF is interesting. Assume you are giving an initial rotation to the rotor with same direction of RMF. You can see that opposite poles of RMF and rotor will attract each other, and they will get locked magnetically. This means that rotor will rotate the same speed of RMF, or rotor will rotate at synchronous speed. Synchronous speed can easily be derived as follows. This means that if one has got control over frequency of the electricity, speed of synchronous motor can be very accurately controlled. But if the rotor has got no initial rotation, situation is quite different. North pole of the rotor will obviously get attracted by south pole of RMF and will start to move in the same direction. But since the rotor has got some inertia, this starting speed will be very low. By this time, south pole of RMF will be replaced by a north pole, so it will give repulsive force. As a net effect, rotor won't be able to start, or synchronous motors are not inherently self-starting. To make synchronous motors self-start, a squirrel cage arrangement is cleverly fitted through pole tips. At the starting, rotor field coils are not energized, so with revolving magnetic field, electricity is induced in squirrel cage bars, and rotor starts rotating just like an induction motor. When the rotor has achieved its maximum speed, rotor field coils are energized. So as discussed earlier, poles of rotor gets locked with poles of RMF and will start rotating at synchronous speed. When rotor rotates at synchronous speed, relative motion between squirrel cage and RMF is zero. This means zero current and force on squirrel cage bars. Thus, it will not affect synchronized operation of motor. Synchronous motors will produce constant speed irrespective of motor load only if the load is within the capability of motor. If external torque load is more than torque produced by the motor, it will slip out of synchronism and will come to rest. Low supply voltage and excitation voltage are other reasons of going out of synchronism. It is interesting to note that synchronous motor has got the same constructional features of an alternator. Synchronous motors also helps in improving overall power factor of the system. That's all about working of synchronous motors. Thank you.
So another great overview video there of a synchronous motor. So, like you saw on the video, synchronous motors operate on a different principle to that of an induction motor. We saw in the induction motor that we looked at earlier, and more specifically a three-phase squirrel cage induction motor, that the rotor turned at a speed known as asynchronous speed, which is basically a speed that is slower than the rotating magnetic field, which they were referring to as RMF in that last video. So there was a difference in those two speeds that we called slip speed. And that's how the thing actually worked, because then there was relative motion between the two and we achieved electromagnetic induction. The synchronous motor doesn't do that. In the synchronous motor, the rotor turns at the same speed as the rotating magnetic field in the stator. So in other words, it operates at synchronous speed. Hence the name of the machine, a synchronous motor. So to that end, a principle that achieves that rotational rotor speed at synchronous speed is referred to as magnetic locking. And there was a wonderful animation on that video to show you the principle of magnetic locking, when the north and the south poles align and they lock together, so then the rotating magnetic field locks it into synchronous speed and drags it around as it rotates. Okay, so you've got a great diagram in your textbook here of a synchronous motor, which really gives you a good idea as to the special characteristics per se of the synchronous motor. So this is in reference to figure 27 in your textbook. So the first thing that you notice, or the first thing that I notice with this diagram, is that there is both an AC and a DC supply. Well, that's unusual, isn't it? We haven't seen a machine previous like that. We've seen alternators, for example, that require DC excitation for a rotating magnetic field, then they produce an AC generated supply. We've seen that, but we haven't seen it regarding a motor. Now, because we did see it with regards to an alternator, there's another characteristic that they mentioned on the video that's very important, and that is that a synchronous motor can be run as an alternator due to that fact. So that's another important consideration for a synchronous motor. So in order to get this thing to rotate at synchronous speed, we need two sets of windings. We have our stator windings and we have our rotor windings. And it's the rotor windings that are going to be DC excited. But we only excite the rotor winding with a DC supply once we achieve a minimal slip. Now that basically means that this thing is going to start up as an induction motor. Or we could start it in a variety of different other ways that I'll discuss in just a moment. But at the moment, most of these things start up as induction motors. Then when we get to a minimal slip, and again, slip is simply the difference in speed between the rotor speed and the rotating magnetic field, the DC supply to the rotor will now be turned on, it will energize, and it will now pull into synchronism by attracting the north to its south poles, respectively, around that stator. And then it will lock in and rotate around. And then due to the fact that it will now be magnetically locked, as long as the motor is within its load tolerance, it will maintain speed irrespective of the load. So that's a really important consideration when talking about synchronous motors, as they operate very differently in terms of a principle to that of the induction motor. Now, another type of synchronous motor, which is just very briefly mentioned in your textbook, is that of a shaded pole motor. So I'm referring here to figure 28 in your textbook, which is the diagram top left here on my slide. Now, a little bit of a caveat with this, depending upon what you've known previously or what you've learned previously regarding single-phase motors. Shaded pole motors can be synchronous, but they can also be shaded pole induction motors also. The shaded pole synchronous motor, the one referred to in your textbook, is pictured top left, and the shaded pole induction motor is pictured bottom right. Same motor, but different operating principle in that the one top left operates at synchronous speed, whereas the one bottom right does not. Now, the big difference constructionally speaking between the two is you can see that the one bottom right, the shaded pole induction motor, uses a squirrel cage rotor, whereas the one top left uses a permanent magnetic rotor, because you can see a north and a south pole on that rotor in the diagram top left. Now these things, known as salient, or have salient poles, and that's where you get this shading coil idea to get its name of shaded pole. A salient pole is simply a projecting pole, and you can see that in both of these diagrams here. Here is the salient pole on the South Pole, here's the one on the North Pole. And again on this diagram, here are our salient poles that project forward. Now around those salient poles there are coils of copper windings, and these are referred to as shading coils. And these shading coils then help to get this thing have an interaction between the two magnetic fields, the one of the rotor and the two, the shading coil, which has an induced flux on the actual pole. Now we won't go into this too deeply as it's beyond the scope of the course, but suffice it to say that this is a version that's often overlooked of a synchronous motor. You are very unlikely to come across this in industry, as these have very specialized applications, and they also don't produce very much torque at all. So they're really only used for constant speed loads that require very little torque. Something like a large clock, for example, that will operate at a very slow speed and would require a very low torque. That's pretty much all I want to mention about shaded pole motors. You will get into these in a little bit more depth when you do your 2B3. Okay, so to summarise up then a bunch of considerations for our synchronous motor, some were mentioned on the video and others that I mentioned earlier, is the first and the large one is that synchronous motors are not self-starting. And the big question to that is, well, why not? Well, like you saw on the video, when this thing first starts up, the rotating magnetic field in the stator is whipping around at synchronous speed. But the rotor upon startup is stationary. Well, there's a massive relative difference in motion between the two. So there isn't time, due to the inertia of the rotor, which is the rotor's tendency to resist a force to actually move, there isn't time for it to magnetically lock and move around. Because by the time it locks onto the opposite poles move past, and it's now repelling on the next pole. So this is why these things can't start up on their own. They need some other method, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. Now secondly, they will operate equally well in either direction. Doesn't matter which way they turn, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, they'll be fine operating in both rotations, as most other motors will be. The next one is that they can be used for power factor correction. Now that is not commonly found, but it is a characteristic of synchronous machines, and this can be achieved by over and under exciting that field winding. So you'll learn again more about that in 2B3. At third class you just have to know that they can be used for power factor correction. The fourth one is that there is a DC supply to the rotor, and that provides that part for magnetic locking when we're just below synchronous speed. And then lastly, we have an AC supply applied to the stator. And because of points 4 and 5, this is the big reason why a synchronous motor can be configured to operate as an alternator or an AC generator. Okay, so in terms of motor applications then for these things, I've mentioned a couple of these earlier. First of all, the clock. The clock application is typically found with a shaded pole synchronous motor. But other applications include anything that has a constant speed of a low torque. So you can find them for using things like fans or compressors, specialized applications like roller coasters, for example. They have a very specialized type of synchronous motor called an LSM, which stands for a linear synchronous motor. Certain pumps have used synchronous motors, and again, any sort of load that might require power factor correction, but that's not commonly found. These days, power factor correction is done predominantly using banks of capacitors. Okay, so let's talk about that starting method idea then. We mentioned earlier that the synchronous motor cannot start up in synchronous speed. In other words, it can't start up already magnetically locked. So it has to have some other method to be started up before we turn on the DC supply to the rotor and it then pulls into synchronism, or it magnetically locks. Now there's a few options as to how this can be done. First, a method you used to use years ago but you don't really see anymore is to use something called a slave or a pony motor. And there's a very simplified diagram of this bottom left of this slide. This is simply a small separate motor that will run the synchronous motor up to speed, a speed slightly lower than the rotating magnetic field speed, i.e. synchronous speed. Once it achieves that, then the DC supply to the rotor will be turned on, it will lock into speed, and the pony motor will declutch and shut down. That's how this was done many years ago, but again, you typically don't see this anymore. Another option, like they discussed on the video, was to have a cage rotor, or a squirrel cage rotor, cleverly inserted into the rotor of the synchronous motor. And in that way, it starts up as an induction motor that we've talked about previously, and then again, when we achieve that minimal slip speed, the DC is applied to the rotor, and it then pulls into synchronism. And the beauty of that is, as well, is if the motor ever falls out of synchronism, the cage rotor will then do its thing again to produce torque and get it back up to minimal slip speed, where it can then pull back in to synchronism. And then the last method to talk about, which is the one that's mentioned on the last page of this objective, is that of an amortisor winding. And again, you don't need to know too much about these other than what an amortisor winding does. An amortisor winding is simply a winding that's turned into the rotor pole faces, and this winding enables the rotor to start up as an induction motor. So you can basically think of it as an amortisor winding is another version of the cage rotor, only instead of using rotor bars, it uses windings, but it does the same thing. So the idea here then with the amortisor winding is it allows the machine to start up as an induction motor. It will achieve minimal slip speed, which is the minimal difference between the rotating magnetic field in the stator and the rotor. And then once it's achieved that speed, the DC supply is energized to the rotor and it will then pull into synchronism, i.e. it will magnetically lock, and then the amortisor winding can then be disconnected, or in other words be short-circuited or taken out of the circuit. So that's the basic idea for the starting methods here regarding synchronous motors. In modern construction, you generally see the insertion of the squirrel cage rotor within the rotor of the synchronous motor. Amortisor windings are seen, but they're typically, again, more specialized sort of applications. And again, you'll get into more of this sort of conversation when you do your 2B3. At the moment, just know what an amortisor winding is, the name of it, and what it basically does. Okay, that's the end of a very straightforward and a very short objective. Give that a good quick review. Watch that video a couple of times that I've embedded into this presentation, as it's a fantastic overview, and then certainly memorize what that amortisor winding is and what it does. And then when you're ready, come back and see me for the next objective, Objective 8, where we'll talk about variable speed control and variable speed starting, as well as other starting methods for large induction motors. So looking forward to that one. I'll see you back real soon. Take care.